This is a series of webinars we're going to be having, mostly around the CMS and how to leverage the CMS and its different components to build things beyond what you use it for in most of the time, which is putting static content pages and some featured opportunity blocks and things like that, but really in ways that you can take advantage of it. So this very first webinar is going to be focusing on the listing block. So what is the listing block? Well, the listing block is probably the workhorse, one of the workhorses of the CMS. And it's one of those blocks that is probably not used as much as it could be, along with the form and the listing block. Those two, it's amazing the different things you can do with them. And what it works in two modes. The first mode is it actually allows you to organize your CMS pages so that you can organize them as blog postings or news items and things like that. And I'm going to apologize from the beginning. I've had this nagging cough for a couple of weeks, and it's so you're going to hear it quite a bit. But the idea of the listing block is that in one mode it allows you to organize your CMS pages. That's not what we're going to be focusing on today. We're going to be focusing on the second mode, which is a way for you to pull data out of Salesforce and display it to your users in different formats. It can be a list, it can be a grid, it can be a data table, you can do charts, you can do sliders, you can do calendars. So we're going to be doing 3 listing blocks today. So some basic assumptions. So one is that folks on the call have a basic understanding of HandsOn Connect or LlamaSite. I know if you're a LlamaSite customer, you've probably not heard much of HandsOn Connect, if at all. If you're a HandsOn Connect customer, you haven't heard much of LlamaSite. These are 2 of our products, and if you're a customer of one of them, you're in the right place. The CMS is almost identical in both of them, and what we're going to be covering today, which is the listing block, is identical for both. Also, a basic understanding of Salesforce, basic of understanding MPSP. This is really not that critical, but you'll probably get a little bit more out of it. If MPSP is the nonprofit success pack, also nonprofit cloud from Salesforce, and then just to set the level of what we're going to be talking about, we are going to be covering a lot in terms of the level of CMS, but we're basically going to be between basic and medium with some advanced tricks towards the end. So the very first thing, like this tool allows you to not only show, let's say, volunteer data if you're a HandsOn Connect customer, but also if you wanted to show your member data or show other data through the portal, you can do that. Today, we're going to be looking at donor data. So the first thing is to imagine what is it that we could do with this. So how might we set up a simple portal for donors where they can see their donation history, some metrics, and be able to donate on that same page? And so that's what we're imagining, and that's what we're going to try to build out today. So on the build part, we're going to build a simple dashboard, as I said, and we're going to do it all with CMS listing blocks, and we're going to use standard objects in Salesforce. So what we're going to build is something similar to that page you see hanging right here on the left. We're going to have a top section that's going to show some metrics. Then we're going to show a middle section that shows the donation history of a donor. And then we're going to have a chart, just so we can have a chart, so we can show you how the chart works. And then as a bonus, we're going to also include a way to pay if there's a pending payment. So if the donor has, let's say they pledged and not paid, we can give them a button to go ahead and make that donation. So what will we be working with? On the Salesforce side, we're not going to be doing a lot. We're just going to be creating some list views. But just so you know, we're going to work with the contact object because that's where our donors are. We're going to work with opportunities, which are our donations. And we're going to take advantage of the nonprofit success pack in that if you have donations created with opportunities tied to a contact, it will automatically summarize that data in the contact. And you'll see how we're going to use that a little bit later. And then on the HandsOn Connect LlamaSite side, we're going to be doing a basic CMS page. We're going to be doing 3 listing blocks of different types. This is just to show you different ways on how you can do things. There's a lot more types of listing blocks than the ones listed there, but we'll start with this. So we're going to start with a data table. We're going to do a chart, and we're going to do a custom HTML. And each of those are just a little bit they get a little bit more complex. And then we are going to touch very, very briefly on forms, but we will have a whole different webinar on forms. So let's get to work. We're going to build this live. And so this is our use case. So we have a donor. We're going to call her Amy, who's made several donations over the year. And now we want to be able to give her a place that she can log in and see her donations, see if she's pledged anything, and if she has to be able to go ahead and pay those. So let me get out of the presentation here. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to jump to Salesforce. And I'm going to look at this user. Her name is Amy Pond. And I'm going to build the use case around her, but this is going to work for any donor that you have in the system. And because it's when they log in, we'll know who they are and we'll be able to show the appropriate data. But I'm looking at Amy here. If I look at her related opportunities, I can see that she has about 9 opportunities here, going back to 2018. And I see that they're all been, the payment has been received because the stage is posted, and that she has 1 pledged. So she's promised to pay. So I'm not going to get a lot into opportunities, which is really the heart of the donation module for Salesforce. We actually have a nonprofit cloud course starting, I believe, next week, and you can inquire about that. That will get a lot more into that. But just know for the moment that our donor is a Salesforce contact, and that the opportunities associated to that donor, if they're a donation type, those will be the ones we'll be looking at. And then this is what we're going to build out. So if I look at the data here, it should match right here. I have her average donation, lifetime donations, recent donations, and donor since. I also have my listing of her history of donations, and then I have a chart down here that shows her donation over the years. So where do I start with this? So I know I want to create a dashboard. So the very first thing I'm going to do is decide, what do I want in this dashboard? So I wanted some high-level metrics, which are the ones I selected above. These might not be the ones you want to show, but I'll tell you where these came from. I also wanted to show the history, and I also wanted to include a chart. So I'm going to need to be able to organize my data in these different ways so I can pull it into HandsOn Connect or LlamaSite. And so this is where the Nonprofit Success Pack helps me, because when I look at all these opportunities here, the Nonprofit Success Pack automatically summarizes that for me in the contact record. So you'll see that this gift information, it's already done all the work of calculating my average gift, what was the best gift year, was the gift year total, first gift, all that. So I have all this data available to me without having to do anything. As long as I have opportunities and they're associated to this contact, it will do this summary for me. So really all I did to pull up these, to select which ones I wanted here, is I looked at what I had available. Of course, I could have created a formula field for different things and or created something else, but this was more than enough information for what I needed. So I didn't select all of them, I selected 4 of them. Well, technically 5, because I have 2 pieces of data here. I have current year and last year in this one. And so I selected those, and once I selected those, then I need to be able to organize that information so I can send it to the listing block. So here I'm going to start switching between Salesforce and the CMS. So I'm looking at the exact same page that I'm looking at back here, except that I'm in CMS mode here. And so I already have this created. I'm going to go ahead and create a new page of this. And so I'm going to, and this we're going to spend 2 minutes on really basic CMS, but so I have my donor dashboard here, which is the one I already created, and I'm going to recreate it. So that you can see how it was built out. So I'm going to call this version 2. And I'm going to give it my friendly URL up here. And I'm going to call that version 2, because that's going to be my URL for this. And then I'm going to use this as my title for the page. I could put a title down here, but this is simpler. And then I'm also going to say, remember that when the dashboard, I want the dashboard to only show the information of the person who's logged in, which means that by definition, the person has to be logged in for me to be able to filter that. So it's only going to be for logged in users. And in this case, I have a donor type. So, as far as who can access it and all that, I'm just going to maintain it here. And I'm going to load this in placeholder loading. This is not important. It's just that the way the listing blocks get displayed is a little bit nicer. And I'm going to save this. Okay, so I have my page, and now my job is basically to add the different, listing blocks here. Now, before I do that, there's different ways of pulling the data from Salesforce. And I'm going to do it with a list view in Salesforce. So if I go to basically, and a list view is basically any of these views here. So I can, all these views I created here or that came with the system are all list views. And the easiest way to really start one is to clone one. So you clone it, and then you pull the fields that you want. Now, I went ahead and created this one called donor metrics, okay? And if I look at the fields I'm displaying, I basically just went to the contact object, and I need the name of the contact, but everything else is just information I'm going to display somewhere on my dashboard. So remember that I selected average donation, lifetime donation, recent donations, and so on. And I'm also looking at donations per year here. I'm going to use the same listing block for both. And so I'm going to, I'm going to stand corrected. This is actually pulling from the opportunities, not from the contact. But basically, I created a view with all the data I needed here. So, so that I can do those metrics. So I have my total gifts, my average gift, and all that. And remember, NPSB gave me all this, so I didn't really have to do anything. All I had to do was create this view. Once I have this view created, I'm able to connect my listing block to this view so I can pull that data into HandsOn Connect or LlamaSite into the CMS. So what I'm going to do is create my listing block. And the very first one I'm going to create is the middle one, this one here, the list of my donations. Yes, I'm going to do that, which means I just showed you the wrong listing block. So I'm going to go to my other listing block, which is opportunities. Because remember, donations are a list of opportunities. So I'm going to basically repeat the same spiel, but with the opportunities. And so what I have here is I created this listing block of things that I'm going to show on my list here. So you'll see that I have an amount received, a close date, a stage, and a fiscal year. You could have selected any fields from the opportunity. Those are the ones I selected. So you'll see that I have opportunity. I also have organization name, which I'm not going to use at all. And then I have amount, which is the amount of the donation, the amount of the payment, the close date, post date, fiscal year. And then I have a couple of other ones here, which I'm not using in that listing block. And then I have this last one, which we're going to get to at the very end, but for the moment, just ignore it. Okay. So now that I have my list view of the data that I want to push to my listing block on the portal, I can go ahead and create this data table here. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to add a block. So I'm going to call it donation history. I'm going to assign it. And I know that if you've worked with blocks before, you've seen this before. So I'm going to assign it to where I want it. It's going to be an internal page, and I also want it available on mobile and tablet. So it's not on the home page, so I don't need to select that. Okay. I'm going to give it a title. I'm going to just go to my donations. And I'm going to show that title. The rest of this I'm not going to use. Now, this is where I start connecting this to Salesforce. So remember that I said that you can use the listing block for pulling data out of Salesforce, or you can use it for your CMS pages. So when you're using content types, that's your CMS pages, but I'm gonna pull data from a Salesforce view. You'll see that there's other options if you, and we'll cover this in an advanced version of this, is you can use SQL directly if you're really into it. But Salesforce views is by far the quickest and the fastest. So I'm gonna pull it from a Salesforce view. Once I say Salesforce view, it's going to ask me which object I want to use. So remember, we're creating a list of opportunities. So I'm going to basically look for my opportunity here. And then it's going to have the views. Now, I'm going to use that view I created. I tend to name them bracket LLS, which stands for LlamaSite or HOC, so that I know these are views that are not necessarily intended for everyone to use in Salesforce. They're really intended for to pull data into the portal. So I'm going to select that view. And now that I have this view, I'm going to select basically how I want to display this. And so I want to, in this case, I'm going to use a data table. Okay. And then there'll be a couple of other things I can enable. So I'm going, if you look at here, you'll see that I have a search box up here. So I'll go ahead and enable that. Display search section. You can also do auto suggest, which means when people start typing, it will try to guess what you're searching for. So I'm going to enable auto suggest, and I'm going to do it based on the opportunity name. So when they start, that's what's going to do, what's going to show. As far as the number of items, I want to see all the donations. But I don't want to see them all at once. I want to be able to just see 10 and paginate through them if I want to see more. So I'm going to say items per page 10. And then, and you'll see, I'm obviously ignoring a lot of these other settings. We'll cover those in other parts that they tend to be a little bit more advanced. But I'm also going to display the paging. So I can go from page to page depending on how many I have. And then and these are basically the columns I have that are going to display. So I'm going to, I don't really, I want the opportunity name because that's going to tell me the description of it. I don't need the organization name. I do want to show the amount and what has been received. I'd like to show the close date, so I'm going to leave that as is. I'm also going to leave the stage and the fiscal year. And then I'm going to say, I don't want to see any of these other fields. Now you'll see that there's a lot more fields listed here than in my listing block, and the reason is because the listing block is smart enough to know if your object is related to other objects. It also brings the create date, all these other things automatically. But the top of the list is my list block. So this is the data I said I needed here, and then the next part here is I'm going to assign this to this page. So I'm going to grab the page I gave it. I'm going to give it here. So it displays it only on this URL because that's the only page I want to show it. And for the moment, I'm not going to do anything else. I'm going to go ahead and save it to see how that's looking. Okay, so I'm already pulling a list in here. A couple of things. One is my title of the page is at the bottom, so I'm just going to drag it to the top, so it's in the right order. And then I'm looking at this, and I'm looking at a couple of things. One is I'd like to show the $sign here. I mean, after all these are currencies. And then the other thing is I'd like to see my most recent donation at the top. So to correct that, I'm going to come into my amount, and I'm going to say to show the $sign basically. And if you were using a different currency, you could select a different currency. And I'm also going to do that for the amount received. Okay, and then the other change I wanted to do is I want my most recent donation at the top. So I'm going to grab my close date, and I'm going to basically sort it by this column. So I'm going to turn on the sort here, and I'm going to tell it to sort descending. So it puts the the highest date at the top. And I'm going to save that. And then I'm going to save this and take another look. Okay, so I got here pretty quickly. There's really only one thing that is kind of bothering me a little bit, that this payment amount received seems kind of long. So I don't really think, since this relates to this one, I can probably get rid of the payment. So I'm just gonna come over here to payment received, and I'm gonna basically just relabel that. So it's pulling the label from Salesforce, but I'm gonna override that. Okay, so we've gone through this. And if I wanted to see the decimal places here, I could come to basically the amount. Since these are mostly rounded amounts, integer amounts, I'm not going to do it. But I could have said, show me 2 decimal places. So there's other things you can do with formatting here. For the moment, I think this looks nice and clean, so I'm going to leave it that way. So great, I have my history. Now, do keep in mind one thing, that as I'm setting this up, I'm pulling all the data out of Salesforce. I haven't told the listing block to only pull the data for the person I'm logged in. And the reason I haven't done it yet is if I do it, then I won't see anything, because the account I'm using right now does not have really a contact in Salesforce, so it would not filter anything. So I'm going to leave it like this for the moment while I add the other 2 listing blocks. So the next listing block that and if I compare it here, it's pretty close to this. I mean, it's actually identical to this. It's the same one. So now I'm going to go and look at my donation. I'm going to add this chart here. So I'm going to go here, and all I'm going to do is just start another listing block. And so I am going to call this chart. And I'm going to go through the initial steps that I went through over there. I'm going to assign it to a page and a region in the page. For those of you who work with CMS, these are the regions. I'm going to give this a title. Donation. Oh, great, I had it in memory already. I'm going to say show the title. And I'm basically going to go through the same steps I did before. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to pull this from the opportunities. And I'm going to do I'm going to use the same view for this. The difference here is I'm going to chart it. So I could do a bar chart, a column chart, a pie chart, a donut chart. So I'm going to do bar chart. Okay, and then I'm going to basically select what I'm going to have as my values. So it's going to be amount paid, which is basically the amount received. And then keep in mind that if it's a pledge, since the amount hasn't been received, then it wouldn't show up in the chart. But if you want to do that, then you just use the amount field. I'm just going to use the amount paid field. And then I am going to organize this by year. So I'm going to go by fiscal year. But I could have done something else. I could have done it by type. So if you wanted to chart, like if you had different types of donations, or tied to different campaigns, you could basically do it by campaign or different things. Okay? And then I'm going to give it some labels. So I'm going to call the x-axis program year. And okay, it looks like I did a hour served one at some point. But basically, and then the y-axis is going to be, I'm just going to call it donation. Okay. And then for the moment, I'm not going to do anything here. I'm just going to assign it to the page. Same thing I did before. And I'm going to save it and see what it looks like. Okay. Obviously, this is more of a horizontal chart, not a vertical one, but it works. If I wanted to change this to, I would do a column chart here. That way it matches what we built on our site. So I'm going to, okay, that looks good to me. It just happens to be in the wrong place. I'm just going to put this at the top, and then I'm going to scoot this one above it so I can kind of get in the same order that I had it before. So at this point, I've done in probably 20 minutes, I've added 2 listing blocks that gives me the history of donations, and then my donations by year. Now, once again, we're not filtering this for a specific donor. So right now it's just picking up whatever is in that view that I created. We'll add those filters a little bit later. The next one we're going to add are basically these metrics here. And there's several ways of doing this. I actually opted, maybe to your chagrin, is one of the more complicated ways, because I wanted to show you, for those of you that are more comfortable with HTML and CSS, that there's ways that you can really fine tune what you want to show. But we could have done this with a grid a lot easier. And so what I'm going to do here is that I am going to show you that block that we have that I already created that's being shown there. So you'll see that we gave it a name, we assigned it to the regions we wanted, we assigned it, and this, at the moment, it's on the original page. It's not on the new page yet. And then what we did here is we selected of the display. So basically, remember, this time I'm pulling the data from the contact, because I'm pulling that summary data from what NPSP summarized for me from the opportunities they have. So it's that first list view that I showed you called donor metrics. And I'm only using a couple of these. I put a lot more in here than I really needed. But if I go back to my listing block, I've selected contact as the object. I selected that listing view that has that list view that has all the metrics. And then here I could have selected a list. With a grid, it would have been a lot simpler. But since this is demonstration purposes, I wanted to give you a flavor of how you could do this really, really custom if you want it. A slider might have worked, but we're going to use a custom template. But you'll see that there's other things. There's data table, calendars, maps. So imagine everything you can do with the listing block on displaying data. So if you had locations or something like that, you could display them as a map. If you had items with dates or appointments or things like that, you can display as a calendar. Things like, and you have a comments timeline that is more of a feed. So if, and we're going to be covering feeds in one of our webinars when we talk about the chat and feed module. But, and then you can do charts. But here I'm going to do custom template. So custom template basically says, do whatever you want. Okay. And so there's a couple of things I did here, because I'm only going to be displaying the metrics I want, and it's really not a list. Although this listing block is called listing block, I'm really listing the data for one item. So you're going to see that this is technically not necessary, but it's a good practice. I said, look, I'm only going to put one item. I'm only going to have one item per page, and I'm only going to load one item. You don't really need to do this, because once you have the filters in, it will do it automatically for you. But it's always a good practice that if you're using the listing block to basically display some detail that is not a list or a chart, that you do it this way. Okay, and then I don't really need to order the results because I'm showing only the one record. There's only one contact with this information. And then here I basically did HTML. And I know that for those of you who've never worked with HTML, this is going to look really complicated, and it could be. But the idea here is to show you how you can create your own templates, really highly customized, using this feature. Like I said, we could have done this with a grid, which would have simplified this quite a bit, but I'm going to walk you through this in a couple minutes. So a couple things here. So one is, if you look at this page, it's basically 4 blocks, 4 tiles, with each one with its own little icon, each of it with its title, and then the data that's coming in dynamically from Salesforce. And so basically, if you've worked with HTML, this is going to look really normal. I basically created 4 of these, and I created one and just cut and paste the rest. I am using a class here that we are going to have a webinar on classes and CMS for more advanced things of the CMS. And then this is called an image tag. So this is where the image is coming from. This is basically called the header tag. And it's saying that this is the header I'm going to use, average donation. And then this one here is probably the important one. This is the one that's pulling the data dynamically from Salesforce. So if I look here on my right, these are all the fields I have available to show in this template. And if I want to, for example, show the average amount, all I have to do is look for the average amount here and place it between these curly brackets. And then the CMS will know, oh, okay, I'm not meant to show this MPO02 underscore average amount underscore C. What I'm meant to do is go to Salesforce, grab this amount, and show the amount, not the actual text that I'm putting in here. So that's how this the system knows to show data. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this template. Like I said at the beginning, the idea here is for you to know that you can do really simple charts and tables and grids with point and click, or you can go all out with HTML if you wanted to, if this is what you feel comfortable with. But I will cover a couple more things here. One is that besides this HTML, you'll also have some formatting here. So if I, for example, remove this part here and save this, so right now, notice how the data is shown like in a standard US format. But if I refresh that, it actually puts it in this GMT format. So we don't want that. So one of the things that you can do, you could do it on the Salesforce side if you wanted to, but the one cool thing is that there's a lot of formatting you can do here. Sorry, I opened the wrong listing block. I went at the top of it. That's because I am looking at the one we're building, not the one that was built already. Okay, so one of the things that there's all these little tricks that allow you that if I put this inside, it will tell it format this date as month, day, year. And all that information is down here. And then I am going to basically go ahead and save this again. If I refresh here, okay, I must have applied it to the wrong one. Let me double check what I did here. Yeah, I applied it to the total amount and not to the date. So get rid of there. Okay, that should do it. Okay, so now I have it back. So like I said, we're not going to recreate this one. We're just going to basically cheat a little bit here. And I am going to come here. This is the one we just created. And because I already have that donor dashboard metrics, I can actually use this on different pages. So I'm going to assign it to both my original page and the new page. And that way I'm reusing. I'm going to say I'm going to use in this 2 pages. So that way I can reuse this without having to recreate it if I wanted to show it in multiple pages. So I'm going to save that. Okay. And so now I have it there at the top. I'm going to order it. And this pretty much gives me the dashboard that I was looking for. Now, there's a couple of things that I still have to do. So remember that I said that it's important that, I mean, we want, when a donor comes in, they only see their donation. So I have to tell the system, each listing block, that to filter this information by the donor who's logged in. This top one is actually already filtered because I had it working. And the way you do that is in this section down here called filters. And there's a lot of information here, and there's a ton of different things you can do. But there's, like I said, there's going to be an advanced listing block that will cover a lot of that. But basically, what I did is I added this rule here. I'm basically saying the contact ID in the data, in this case, the contact ID of the contact record, has to equal this. We call this a token. Okay. And they're listed up here. You'll see that we talk about tokens up here, but you can also, if you start typing here, it'll show you all the tokens you have available. So an S stands for a session token. So that means that it's pulling data related to the person who's logged in. So it's the current user ID is basically the Salesforce contact ID. The account ID is the related account ID of that user. Sorry, the current contact is a related ID. This is the ID if in HandsOn Connect you're logged in as a partner. And then you can also filter by current date and things like that. There's other parameters that we're going to look into, like you'll see that if I type P:, I'll get some other parameters. We'll talk about that in more in depth in a different webinar. The only reason I'm showing you this is because one of the bonuses I'm going to give you is basically a link that uses this. Okay, so this one is already set up, so I don't really need to do anything to this one, but this one I do. So I'm going to come to my filter here, and I'm going to say, I happen to know that in the opportunity, the contact is related to the primary contact here. So I'm going to say the primary contact is equal to S:, I don't remember, I know I start, but I don't remember what it's called, so I go, oh, okay, it's the current IDs. I do that, and I add. I could add additional filters here. I don't need to in this case, but so I'm going to save that. Okay, and notice now I don't see anything because my CMS user might be different from yours, but mine specifically is not tied to any specific account. And now I have to do the same thing here. So I'm going to come down here. And I'm going to say for this view, this is the exact same view that we're using in the list above. So once again, I'm going to do S:, current user ID, add, save. Okay, so this, I mean, because I've done this a lot, this looks good to me. I really shouldn't be seeing any data because now that I've enforced in each listing block that the user, that I'm going to filter by the user logged in, and I don't have a user ID with my current CMS user, then this looks correct to me. So now we have to test it where on my other page where we have, where we do have a Amy logged in. To make my life a little bit easier, I'm going to version 2, and I can select the page from here, and I'm going to put it towards the end of that, and it's going to be logged users and profile donor. And I'm going to save that. So what that does, it gives me a link to the new dashboard we created. This is my original, this is my new one here. And so if I go back here where I'm logged in as Amy and I refresh this page, I should see my new menu item. So I'm going to click on that. And voila, we have our dashboard. Now, there's a couple of things we can do to make it nicer, to format it. One of the things I was going to show you is, as I promised at the beginning, we're going to look at 3 advanced features, okay? So I'm going to do these really quickly. We're gonna spend more time on these in a future webinar, but we're just going to do these so you can see additional things you can do. So one of the things I'd like to do is that if I look at I can see that here I have some that are pledged, some that are posted. So I can see that I have them in different stages, and I'd like to be able to filter by those stages. So I'd like to see, okay, I like to see everything I've pledged. I like to see everything that I've donated. And so I'm going to add what's called the facet. And so if I open that listing block here, and like I said, I'm doing this very quickly, I can see it's going to pull every pick list that's in that view, and I can use that to create a facet. And you're going to see what that looks like in a second. So I'm going to just include stage. And I'm also like to, when I see the filter, so I can search by those, I like to see how many I have in each. So I'm going to turn on show counters per filter. Okay, and that's it. I'm going to save that. Okay, I'm going to go back to my page that's logged in. And now you'll see that I can see that I have 7. So if I only wanted to see the pledged, I can filter there, and it will only show me list the pledge right here. The other is, one of the things you can do is you can create logic in Salesforce and push it to the listing block through a listing view in Salesforce. I know that sounds like a mouthful, but I'm going to show you how we did that. So if I go to opportunities, once again, these are 3 advanced items that I'm sharing and that we'll spend more time on. Remember this column that I told you to ignore here? Okay, that's nothing more than a formula field in Salesforce that I created. And the reason I created this is so what I'm trying to do is show them a button if they owe money, if basically the amount outstanding is greater than 0. You'll see the formula right here. So I'm checking to see if that opportunity has an amount outstanding greater than 0. I want to give them a button where they can go ahead and pay that outstanding balance. But if it's not, then I just want to show a little sign that says paid. And so with this simple formula, I can do that because on Salesforce, I have all that information. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create this formula and I'm going to send it to the listing block through the listing view. And that's why I included that as a column here, because it's a column here. Now it's available to me in my listing block. So I'm going to come here. And if I scroll all my fields here, you're going to see that I have it right here. So I'm going to enable that. And then I don't want to, it's going to show up as LLS pay action, which is the name I gave it in Salesforce. And that sounds confusing, boring. But so I'm just going to call this status or something like that. Or you might want to call it action. So I save that. It's enabled. And it's in the place if this was, I wanted at the end, if for any reason I wanted at the beginning, I can change the order by dragging these little, so notice I can move it up 1 or 2. So if I wanted a different order, and I could always drag it. So I'm going to save this. And now I go back to my page here, I refresh. And now it added this column. So basically anything that's paid, it's marked as paid. But this one is a pledge, so it hasn't been paid yet. So I could put a button there that points to a form, and I click on it. And it automatically, it grabs information on that pledge. I could have put a lot more information in here if I wanted to, but it's basically saying I have a balance of 175 in this pledge. Do I want to pay now? So if I submit this, we're using a PayPal integration. I'm not going to run you through the whole thing, but basically, depending on what integration you're using, PayPal, Stripe, Authorize.net, we'll run it through their system. And then once it's paid, the opportunity will be updated as posted, and then the payment will be recorded, and you can even record the status of the transaction, if it was a credit card, and all that. We're on the PayPal test server, which tends to run really slow, but it will show me that PayPal. So because I have a PayPal account, but basically now it takes me. You'll see that it put the right amount up here, how much I owed. If I pay this, then our system will basically recognize the payment, and then you're done. That will be posted. And if they paid less for some reason, then they will still have an amount owed, and that button will keep on appearing. The very last thing I want to do is, if you'll see that there's probably a difference here. So if you look at this version versus version 2, you'll see that this version, these two listing blocks have this white background and the little box around it, while in version 2, I don't have that, which could be fine. I mean, you might like this version, but I'm going to show you quickly how I did this. This is really advanced, but I also want to get you prepared for future webinars. This is basically done with what we call code injection. So there's a couple of steps here that you need to do. I'm just going to do one of them, is that I'm going to come up to where it says donations here, and I'm going to basically right click and click on inspect. And I'm going to go find the block name of this. Okay. And you'll see that if I hover over it here, this container block, it's going to select it. So I'm going to copy that. And then I am going to come here. And this is really just for you all that are really into CSS and things like that. But here's our code injection settings. And you'll see that we have different blocks here that so I can just add my block there. And this is not necessary. There's other ways of doing this, but like I said, I'm trying to cover a little bit of all the options you have here. And now you see that it put this nice white box around it. Like I said, there's other ways of doing this, but in a nutshell, this is how you can create a quick donation dashboard. And you could do this for everything. You can do it. You can create a membership dashboard with your membership renewals. You could create additional volunteer dashboards and things like that. There's a lot of this that we have ready to go. We use some of the things that we already have just to show you this. But if you really wanted to do this for yourself, you see how simple it is in less than an hour. We built this dashboard, and it's fully functional. So these are the 3 advanced features that I had promised. And then the last stage is launch. And as you can see, it's the easiest stage. There's nothing to do. Everything we built was functional. This was not prototyping. This was nothing like that. That page will work next time someone logs in, or anyone logs in, or whoever you give the rights to log in. So with that, I'm going to wrap up and maybe open up to some questions. I know that we don't have a ton of time.
Hey, Alfredo, thank you so much. That was awesome. Is it okay to ask a question?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, cool. I have very limited and basic knowledge of Salesforce, and my colleague is actually much better, but I'm taking notes for her. This is a very basic question, but those really cute icons that you use, like you can customize those, I'm assuming, and you would just create your own art. And then where would you save that so you can pull that into the dashboard, like the little 4 icons that you had at the top?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the easiest place really is if you actually have an image gallery. So if I come and the easiest way to get to it is just to go to your page component of the page,
right?
And it has my little icon here.
Okay.
And if I browse server, usually what I do, you have like an image folder, and usually what I do is I create a subfolder called icons. So I usually have one called icons, logos, charts, depending. So, and then I basically upload here all the icons I need.
Okay, so you've stored them already. You could upload, download, and then just pull from that and kind of custom create that visual. I didn't even remember there was that box there, so that's really good to know. Very cool.
Cool. And any other questions? Well, if not, thank you so much for attending the webinar. We are going to be running these monthly, and we're going to be running several series of them. We might sneak in a couple of extra webinars, but basically we're going to have what we call the dashboard training series, which is a lot about creating these interfaces with your customers to either tailor it more to what their need, to push information out. Like there's so many other things we could have done, with the dashboard that we've actually done for our customers, or customers have done themselves. For example, they can click on a button to see their tax information at the end of the year, so you don't have to send everything out and things like that for their donations. So we're going to have the dashboard training series, and right now we're doing the advanced listing blocks. We did the CMS listing block. We're going to be doing part 2, which is the advanced, and there's probably going to be an advanced part 3, because there's a lot you can do with advanced. We're also going to be looking at forms. Forms is the second workhorse of the CMS. And then we're going to also do like a series of basic CMS tips and tricks. We know there's a lot there. And so that, everything from if you wanted to track your users with Google Analytics, how do you do that? It's a really easy, but sometimes it's not all that obvious. And then we're going to do an advanced version of that. We're also going to be doing webinars on modules and add-ons. So these are additional things that we have. So we have awards and badges, which gamifies a little bit your HandsOn Connect. We also have wish list donations, which is more for in-kind donations, and so that you can post a wish list of needs and people can donate, things like that. We have a shopping cart and inventory, Skills Connect, and so on. So we'll be talking more about these, and you'll probably get more information in the newsletter that just started going out this month. And then we also have a Salesforce education series, and I know that yesterday we had an initial meeting with some customers, and people are going to be taken to see what the next course is going to look like, which I believe starts next week, Jenny or Melissa? Yeah. Okay. So if you want information about that, that's really more about Salesforce and PSP, and it is incredibly powerful, the nonprofit cloud. There's so much, and there's so much it does for you already. Like I said, just the fact that it summarized all that data, it really, if not, I would have had to create formula fields for all that data. It was just there. You saw how easy it was. So know that all this is coming up. And with that, thank you for being here. And I do believe we have 2 minutes for questions or anything else or comments. If not, we're going to wrap it up.
We know that the recording.
Hi, Star.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Will you email us the recordings, or how can we get on the list to receive those?
Yeah, I think everyone who's attended will get a copy, and then it will probably be in the next newsletter too.
Awesome, thank you.
Therefore, Petty had a question about the charts and the years.
Mm-hmm.
She mentioned, is that a simple sort if the years were out of order?
Oh, yes. So they were, thanks for catching that. I did not catch that. So I can do, so this is my version 2, and it's down here. Yeah, so I should have done it by fiscal year. So I didn't put a sort on it. So I'm going to save that. Let's see. Yeah, you're right. That wasn't in the right order. So I'm going to refresh this page. Now we have it in order. Thanks for catching that, Patty.